Hey everybody, so nice to have you here tonight. My name's Fenella Bell and I'm part of the education team here at Kluge-Ruhe. I am delighted to introduce our host for this evening, Lydia Colwell. Lydia has been our amazing intern all year long. She's done it all virtually and very, very gracefully, and has been a wonderful person to work with. She's a student at UVA. She's graduating in 2023, and she's majoring in both art history and then minoring in global studies and education. And I don't know about you, but I'm just as excited as you probably to learn about sugar gliders tonight. So take it away, Lydia.
Thank you. So we'll jump right in, and I'll encourage people to join me with the chat function at different aspects of this. So don't be afraid to put your thoughts into the chat. But the first question is just, what is a sugar glider? So maybe you've seen one in a picture or at the zoo before, but sugar gliders are little animals that basically look like flying squirrels, and they've been in Australia for over 15,000 years. And they're pretty small. They're only about the weight of a baseball. And the thing that makes gliders so special is that they can glide. So they don't actually have wings that allow them to fly, but they have this extra skin that acts as sort of like a parachute or a little sail, and they can jump off of really high branches and glide through the air without falling down to the ground. And they are so good at gliding, they can actually glide the width of a football field just in one jump. And we classify gliders as mammals. So there's a few signs that we look for when we're trying to classify an animal as a mammal. And those signs are that they're warm-blooded, they have fur or hair in humans' cases, they have a vertebrae or a backbone, they give birth to living gliders, not laying eggs, and their glider mothers feed the babies milk. So we have all of that in common with gliders. We are also mammals. But gliders also belong to a subset category called marsupials. And marsupials are animals that carry their babies in a little stomach pouch. So humans are not marsupials, but gliders are. Take a guess at what other animals in this list are marsupials. We have dog, koala, crocodile, ostrich, kangaroo, and squirrel. I'll tell you that baby gliders are called joeys, just like baby kangaroos. So you might be familiar with that term already. Yes, so kangaroos and koalas are both marsupials. They both have that stomach pouch for babies. And another example, if you're familiar, is wombats. Wombats are also marsupials. So here are some photos of sugar gliders, and we can see that their faces look a lot like possums. And the reason for this is that possums and sugar gliders are all part of the Pitoridae family. So the family Pitoridae are a type of possum that have really characteristic markings, like this long black stripe that we see down the head, back, and tail of the sugar glider in all of these pictures. So starting right up here by the face and going all the way back down the tail. And we can also see in these pictures that they have a lot of extra skin folded up by their sides. So right where that pink arrow is pointing. Touch your wrists and then touch your ankles. And now imagine that you had skin that connected all the way from your wrists down to your ankles. And that's what a sugar glider has. So when they need to glide somewhere, they put all their limbs out into a big star shape, and it stretches that extra skin from their ankles to their wrists, and it creates that little parachute or sail that they use to fly through the air. And we can take a look at some gliders in flight in a minute, and we'll see how that extra skin helps them fly. Here are some pictures of gliders in flight. One thing to notice is this long bushy tail that we see going out to the sides in both of these pictures. So those tails are really helpful because they help gliders not fall off of trees while they're sitting in trees. They'll wrap it around for stability. They also use their tails as kind of an extra hand when they're building their nests. So they put extra leaves and branches in their tails so that they can use their actual hands to build. And the most important qualification of the tail is that it helps them steer while they're flying. So they kind of use it as a steering wheel. They move it back and forth and it helps them balance in the air. And we can definitely notice in these pictures how they spread out that extra skin to create the sail. So here's a clip of a sugar glider making a quick flight. And pay extra attention to how that tail swishes through the air to help him navigate to his landing spot. And we can see the air getting kind of caught underneath his extra skin so that he doesn't fall right to the ground. And here's another video of a sugar glider taking a little flight. He jumps off the pedestal and he spreads all of his limbs out into that star shape. We can see him wiggling back and forth, keeping his balance. And he's got his little parachute that helps him land safely. And we'll see in a second, we'll get a quick glance at a glider eating a snack. So he grabs onto his food with his hands, and we're going to take a closer look at those hands in just a minute. So where exactly do sugar gliders live? This map of Australia, everywhere that has an orange dot is where gliders live. And they prefer the forest or the woods because there's lots of trees that help protect them from predators and so that they can glide from branch to branch. You don't usually see sugar gliders running on the ground like squirrels do. They really like to keep up high in their trees. And gliders are nocturnal creatures, which means that they sleep during the day and then they come out to eat and work at night. So they make their little nests at night, and that's why their eyes are so big. They help them see at night. And we can see in this picture down here, a sugar glider in this little tree hollow with leaves and sticks around him. So he built that using the help of his extra long bushy tail. And up in this picture, we see a sugar glider licking some part of that tree hollow. So next we'll take a look at sort of what sugar gliders like to eat, and what he might be licking off the tree. So sugar gliders get their names because they have a sweet tooth. And gliders love to snack on flower nectar, eucalyptus sap, which is in this bottom right picture down here, and acacia gum, which is in this bottom left picture. And just like humans, or most humans, gliders are omnivores. So omni means all, and vor means one who eats. So gliders eat plants and animals. They can't eat dessert all the time. So they have to balance it out a little bit with some extra plants and animals. And in a lot of areas in Australia, gliders are called lombalk, and we'll see that in the titles of some of the paintings that we're going to look at in a minute. Some Aboriginal people also eat possums as a food source, but it's very rare that sugar gliders are hunted as a food source because they're so small. There's just not a lot of meat on their bones. It doesn't really make sense to hunt sugar gliders. So now we know what sugar gliders look like. We know where they live. We know what they eat, but we don't know what they sound like. Do they chirp like birds? Do they bark like dogs, purr like cats? Take a guess. Make a sugar glider noise, whatever you think that might sound like, and then we'll see how close we are. I'll play you some audio of a sugar glider. So that's called the yap yap call. Sugar gliders would make this call at what time do you think? We talked about how they're nocturnal, so that's a clue. They would make this sound at nighttime. You wouldn't hear it in the forest during the day because sugar gliders would be asleep. So sometimes if you're out in the forest in Australia, you'd be able to hear the yap yap call at night. And now we're going to take a look at two Australian Aboriginal artworks that are in the Kluge-Ruhe collection. So these works by John Lula and Bardayal Lofty Najamarik AO both depict sugar gliders, but they look a little different. So let's take just a minute to let your eyes wander all over these two pieces. You can let them travel from the top to the bottom, from the nose of the sugar glider all the way down the tail. And just take note of the things that you're seeing. If there's a line that stands out to you, or something that catches your eye, or maybe something about the materials stands out, because we'll notice that these aren't on canvas. Did these artist renditions kind of look like the sugar glider photos that we saw? Are there any similarities or differences? I was especially interested in the materials used. These are actually painted on tree bark, and the paints are natural pigments, which basically means that they're homemade paints. Another element that I noticed is the angle of these sugar gliders' heads. So in the Jambalula painting on the left, we can see both of his eyes. And that makes me think that we're looking at this sugar glider from above, which is called an aerial perspective in art. And in Lofty Najamarik's piece on the right, we're looking at the profile of the glider head. So we're looking at it from the side, which makes me imagine that these gliders are running up the tree and they turn their head to listen for other animals in the forest. And another aspect that really stood out to me was the fact that these gliders really seem to have the same bone structure and shape. We've got that loose skin on the side, the long tail. We see that both of those on both works. So we can take a closer look at that bone structure with these X-rays. So these are real sugar glider X-rays. And we'll remember that gliders are mammals, just like humans, which means that they've got that vertebrae or that backbone that goes all the way down the body. And we can see that very clearly in this X-ray, this long backbone that goes all the way down to the tail. And can we see that in the painting close-up? Definitely. The artist has given us all of those bones. And what else is similar between these structures? I'm noticing the arching legs that goes down into the tail. We see that in both the painting and in the actual bone structure of the sugar gliders. So there's a lot of similarities between the art and the real sugar gliders. And now we'll take a closer look at those hands. We can count the number of toes on each of the sugar gliders. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 toes on a real sugar glider hand, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 toes on the painting. And those toes are really especially helpful when gliders are eating, because they can move their thumbs just like humans to grab onto things. And it also helps them land. It helps them grab onto the tree so that they don't just kind of smack into their destination point. And here's a close-up of sugar glider faces. We've definitely got lots of similarities between these two as well. I'm noticing the ears, the eyes, the nose, they all look pretty similar, the whole face shape. And I'm also noticing this sort of cross-hatching, these lines in the painting. I think those make it look very textured, kind of like real sugar glider fur. And that triangle-shaped head. So I'm still sort of curious about natural homemade paints that these artists used. This picture shows a piece of eucalyptus bark and natural ochre, which is a type of earthy clay that can be found in a range of colors like red, orange, yellow, and brown. And I would love to learn more about how these paints are made and how long paintings like these two take to make. So we couldn't find a good video of Lofty Najamarik actually creating a work himself, but we did find a video from ABC Australia that's not from the same region or language group that Lofty is from. But we're going to be able to hear from another Aboriginal artist named Bonduk Marika, who is a Yolngu bark painter in a place called Yirrkala, which is further east from where Lofty paints. And there are definitely similarities between the techniques that Lofty and Banduk Marika use. So she's going to be able to tell us about the process of stripping bark from the tree, mixing natural ochre pigments, and it's important to pass future generations information about country and Aboriginal ancestry.
Now we're going out to an open wooded area to find the best strong straight tree for my bark. Gonna make a good bark. Good thick bark. Good straight. Lovely. We'll do a cutting around up there as high as we can to get a good length of the bark. If it's moist, it'll give itself away easy, and then you kind of just do that and it'll come off straight down. When you go back to the camp, you have to build a fire, big fire. You put the bark over the fire because it's still moist, so it opens out. You put it over at the flattest place you can, onto the foot face down, inside of the bark, facing down. You put as much heavy wood or rocks or whatever on top and leave it there for a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, and in time it flattens. So it's a big process, it's a huge process. Once I start working on one of my important paintings, it'll take me 2-3 weeks to complete, and that's like night and day work. The importance of the art is that it contains laws, it contains protocols, it contains something that you can pass on to your children, your grandchildren. It's very important for them to know where their mother or their grandmother, came from originally and who my ancestors were. And the country holds that, and it gives it in that artwork.
So that definitely helped me understand a little bit more about how those sugar glider paintings might have been made. So I'll invite you to put in the chat or just think about if there's any other information about sugar gliders that you're still curious about, or if you could ask one of our artists, Lofty or Jambalula, a question, what would that question be? I'd be curious to know. So let's take a look at one more artwork from the Kluge-Ruhe collection by George Milperuru, and we'll try to classify this animal together. Do they look like sugar gliders? There's definitely these long wing-type features that stretch from the ankles to the wrists, so that's the same. But what other features do we have to look for in order to know if these are sugar gliders or not? Do they have 5 toes on each foot? Doesn't look like that's as clear. Or do they have that long backbone into a swishy, fluffy tail? Doesn't look like I see one of those either, because it doesn't seem like they're sugar gliders after all. These are actually flying foxes. So flying foxes are a type of bat that live in Australia with sugar gliders. And they look pretty similar in a couple different ways, especially with those long wings that connect from the wrists to the ankles. But we were able to use what we know about sugar gliders to look at another piece of art and sort of gain a better understanding of the animals in that piece, and how animals are a really important part of Australian Aboriginal bark painting. So now we can make some glider friends. Well, if you have your materials next to you, pull those out. We'll need a piece of paper, some scissors, a glue stick, and some coloring utensils. And I'll walk you through how to make our own gliders that can fly through the air. So the first step is to just take that piece of paper. I've got one here with me now. and we're going to fold it so that it's going to create a square. So you just want to fold one piece so that it's lined up on the bottom and you have this extra strip of paper on the side, and make that fold. So if you just got your materials, all the first step is to fold. Hold it this way. We're folding one corner down to the side in order to make a square of paper. And we're going to cut this extra strip off in a minute. So that'll just leave one square of paper. So you can take your scissors now and cut off that extra strip and set it aside because we're going to use it in just a minute. Give everyone 1 second to finish cutting off that extra strip, but it's going to leave you with just a triangle that opens up into a square.
And I'm going to keep this?
Yeah, hold on to that extra strip of paper.
Great.
So the next step is to take 2 corners of your square and fold them into a center point. That's going to look like there's one corner folded into the center, and next I'm going to take this other top one and fold it into the center, just like this. Sure thing.
Like that?
So we've got one square, and we're
Mhm.
going to fold in a top corner into the center
Mhm.
and the other top corner into the center. So
Great,
now we
thank
have 2 flaps. Once you've gotten to this point, the next step is to fold it in half. So right here in the middle where we've just folded these 2 points in, all we're going to do is fold the whole thing in half, just like this. I'll show that again. So we folded our 2 points into the center, and now we're just going to fold it all the way in half so that those 2 flaps we made are now pressed up against each other. We've got a shape that looks like this now. And the last step to finishing the paper airplane is to just fold the extra 2 sides. So if you're looking at it with the point out, I'm going to be folding these 2 flaps down to the sides to create those wings. So I'll show that again. But it's going to create these 2 little side flaps. So we had this shape, and we're going to go out to the edge and out down to the edge. And it's going to leave us with a paper airplane. Skipping slides. And then once you've gotten to this point, we're just going to set the airplane down for a minute and we'll come back to it. There's your finished airplane. And we're going to revisit that extra strip of paper that we cut off. So once you've got your airplane, grab your extra strip of paper and your scissors. We're going to need those for one more snip. And all you're going to do is cut your strip right down the middle so that you're left with these 2 rectangle pieces. And once you've got your 2 rectangle pieces, these are going to become our sugar gliders. So grab any sort of marker or crayon or pencil that you have. And we're going to start by just drawing a rectangle on each of our pieces of paper, but leave a little bit of space up at the top for the head like we see on the slide. So I've drawn 2 rectangles on my papers. And once you're done with that step, we're just going to draw a circle right on top of our rectangle in the middle. So now we're left with our rectangle with a circle on top. And we're going to add one more shape. We're going to do 2 little triangles on top of the circle for ears. And you can make them pointy or you can make them a little rounded like we saw in our paintings. So you're just going to add those to your circle. And the next step is to add your fingers. So you can do these like I did on the slide, add some little hands. You can do long fingers like we saw in the lofty painting, straight lines, rounded lines. Make sure you add 5, just like we saw on the sugar gliders.
Do they have 5 fingers and 5 toes?
5 fingers and 5 toes.
Great.
I've done mine in 2 different ways. So on this one, I did long fingers, like in the lofty painting. And on this one, I did rounded fingers. So you can do whatever you want.
I made kind of crazy hands and fingers.
Perfect. And once you've got your fingers, we're going to add a curved line that goes from the ankle to the wrist. And that's going to be that extra skin that helps our sugar gliders fly. So 2 curved lines for each one, like sort of a semicircle. Just like that. Now we get to add our sugar glider faces. So you can add your eyeballs. You can make them extra big because the big eyes help our sugar gliders see in the dark because they're nocturnal creatures. You can add their nose and their whiskers.
You can fly, woo!
And now we get to color our sugar gliders. So you can add those characteristic markings that make them part of the possum family, like that long stripe down the front of his head. Some sugar gliders have different types of coloring. Some are more brown, some are white and black. And there's even a type of yellow-bellied glider. So in one of my examples here, I gave him a yellow belly. I like to use a pink coloring utensil to do the nose and the fingers, since we know that those are both pink. And once you've got your colored sugar gliders, feel free to take as much time as you need to color those in. But the last step is to just glue them onto the paper airplane. So this is what's going to help them actually fly through the air. And if you don't have glue, you can also just tuck them inside the paper airplane. I like to glue 1 sugar glider on each of the airplane flaps so that there's enough room for both of them on there. I take mine. Ooh.
They have small heads. Otherwise, we're gonna fly upside down, head to head.
I take mine outside to see how far I can get them to fly. If I can get it anywhere close to the width of a football field, but
Oof, that sounds hard.
pretty
I added a tail to mine at the very bottom because I decided he needed a tail to steer.
great idea. You can add the backbone.
I'm gonna do that too. I'm gonna add a tail.
One of my sugar gliders is very fat. I gave him a big fat belly.
He was eating extra eucalyptus sap. Definitely. Thank you for joining me tonight, everybody who came on. It was so much fun getting to tell you about sugar gliders because I think they're really cute and special. And I'm glad that the crafts turned out so well for everybody.